My parents always favored my sister growing up. I was just the afterthought. But when she found out I had $15 million, she completely lost it at Thanksgiving dinner. The room went silent, even Dad couldn't say a word. Imagine spending your entire life fighting for a love that never quite reaches you, always just out of grasp. For 32 years, I was that girl, overshadowed by a sister who received endless praise while I quietly built a multi-million-dollar empire right under their noses. But last Thanksgiving, that perfectly constructed secret shattered into a million pieces, revealing a raw truth that shook my family to its core. You won't believe what happened. Let me take you back to suburban Boston, to a house that looked perfectly normal from the outside. My dad, James, an insurance adjuster, my mom, Diana, a third-grade teacher. A modest colonial, neat lawn, swing set out back. A postcard-perfect American family. But inside those walls, the dynamic was anything but equal. The moment my sister, Audrey, was born 2 years before me, she became the undisputed golden child. I swear, her baby albums were thicker than encyclopedias, first steps, first words, first anything. Mine? Maybe a stray page or two, tucked away like an afterthought in the back of her books. It was 1,000 tiny paper cuts, slowly bleeding my spirit dry. Audrey started dance lessons at 6. My parents were front row, always. Flowers, dozens of photos. Our living room transformed into an Audrey shrine, trophies gleaming. Then, when I was 12, I won the state science fair. A state science fair, you guys. But guess what? My parents skipped the ceremony. Audrey had a dance competition that day. My hard-earned certificate. It ended up in a drawer, gathering dust. Christmas was the same cruel ritual. Audrey unwrapped expensive, requested gifts. I got practical stuff, generic presents that screamed low effort. I still remember one year, Audrey, 14, got this stunning white gold necklace with a sapphire that matched her eyes. Me? A set of educational books about famous scientists. Don't get me wrong, I love science, but the message was clear: Audrey deserved beauty, I deserved utility. Even discipline was a joke. Audrey broke curfew, lied about where she was. A gentle chat. Me? Grounded instantly, extra chores piled on. The double standard was so blatant our neighbors actually commented on it. Our bedrooms told a similar story of unequal investment. Audrey's room was redecorated every few years, ballerinas, pop stars, a sophisticated teen retreat. My room? Same pale yellow walls, same basic furniture from elementary school right up to graduation. I asked to paint my walls dark blue in 8th grade, and my mom said, "We don't have money for unnecessary changes right now." 2 weeks later, Audrey got a full bedroom makeover. It didn't take long for me to figure out that if I wanted any sliver of attention, I had to excel academically. Audrey was a solid B student, great at socializing. I, on the other hand, pushed myself for straight A's. Every academic club, every competition, late night studying. My parents would acknowledge it with distracted nods, or a dismissive, "That's nice, but don't you want to try something fun like your sister?" That constant dismissal could have shattered me. Instead, it forged something else, a fierce, unshakable independence. By 13, I stopped caring about their approval. I cooked my own meals, managed my own schedule, found my own rides to competitions. All while Audrey continued to rely on them for everything, even into high school. She never learned to stand on her own 2 feet, because she never had to. But there was one person who saw me. Truly saw me. My grandmother, Elizabeth, my dad's mother. Grandma Liz was a force of nature, sharp, no nonsense, an accountant from an era when women weren't supposed to have careers. Every week at her house, she'd ask me about my studies, about my science projects, and she'd listen. Really listen. When I was 15, baking cookies in her kitchen, she asked if I knew about compound interest. I shook my head, and that day, she pulled out a notepad and showed me how money could grow. That conversation changed my life. For the next 3 years, she taught me everything: investing, saving, building wealth. Lessons my own parents never even considered. "Your sister might be getting all the attention now," Grandma Liz told me once, "but you, Tanya, you have the mind for true success. And remember, true wealth isn't flashy. The richest people in the room are rarely the ones showing it off. That philosophy became my bedrock. My high school graduation. It should have been a triumph. I was valedictorian. I had a full scholarship to State University's prestigious business program. Up on that podium, giving my speech, I saw my family. My dad was filming, but later I found out the video was mostly of Audrey's reactions, not of me. At my graduation party, my parents spent the entire time gushing to relatives about Audrey getting into an expensive private college, despite her completely average grades. My scholarship. It was a quick aside. Oh, Tanya. Yes, she got a scholarship. She's always been so practical. Practical. That word haunted me. That night, a quiet rage solidified into a promise. Someday, I would build a life so undeniably successful, so massive, that it would be impossible to ignore. But even then, a part of me wondered, by the time I got there, would I even want their recognition anymore? Audrey went off to Westfield University, a private school costing $40,000 a year. Me? I went to State University, full scholarship. The difference in how our parents supported us was a gut punch. They helped Audrey furnish her dorm with everything new, coordinated bedding, a mini fridge, the latest laptop. They drove 6 hours, stayed the whole weekend to settle her in. My turn. My dad dropped me off with 2 suitcases and a box of second-hand supplies. Well, you've always been independent, Tanya. I'm sure you'll figure it out. Call if you absolutely need anything. He was gone in 20 minutes, rushing back to help my mom put together a care package for Audrey, who was already homesick after 2 weeks. My phone calls home that first semester. Always about Audrey's social life, how she was adjusting. When I mentioned my 4.0 GPA after midterms, my mom just said, "That's nice, honey. Did I tell you Audrey got invited to the best sorority on campus?" It was soul-crushing. Financially, it was just as stark. They paid nothing for my education, reminding me I had a scholarship if money ever came up. For Audrey. Full tuition, plus a monthly allowance. I worked 3 jobs, mornings at the campus coffee shop, weekends at the library, tutoring in economics and finance. It was grueling, but I kept my perfect grades. During sophomore year, something shifted. Professor Lambert, my financial analysis instructor, asked me to stay after class. "Miss Warren," he said, "I've been teaching for 25 years, and I rarely see this kind of aptitude for financial markets. Where do you want to take this talent?" That conversation was a turning point. Professor Lambert became the mentor I desperately needed. He opened doors, introduced me to industry contacts, recommended me for internships. The summer after junior year, I landed a position at Maxwell Investments, working directly under the chief strategy officer. I worked 60-hour weeks, a sponge soaking up every bit of knowledge about investment strategies and market analysis. Audrey? She spent that summer backpacking through Europe, entirely on our parents' dime. Then, a devastating blow. My senior year, Grandma Liz died unexpectedly from a stroke. It crushed me. To my parents, she was just family. To me, she was my champion, my mentor, the only one who ever truly believed in me. A month later, her attorney called. She'd left me $50,000. Her entire life savings. My parents were floored, they expected her modest estate to be split evenly. "You should consider sharing that with your sister," my dad suggested at dinner. "Audrey's thinking about grad school." I just stared at him. Did Grandma Liz leave this money to Audrey? "No, but family should support each other," my mom chimed in. "Audrey has expensive dreams, and you always manage just fine on your own." For the first time in my life, I flat out refused. "This," I said, my voice shaking but firm, "is my inheritance from the one person who supported my goals. I'm using it exactly as she would have wanted." I invested every penny, using Grandma Liz's principles. That $50,000 became the seed money for everything that followed. After graduation, I landed a modest position at Blackstone Financial in their emerging markets division. Tiny studio, 3 roommates, no luxuries. I invested 50% of every paycheck. I developed a knack for spotting opportunities others missed. While my colleagues chased traditional markets, I was researching cutting-edge tech, sustainable energy, before they were even trendy. By 26, I had enough to take a calculated risk. I left Blackstone and started my own firm, TWW Strategic Partners. The name was intentionally neutral. I didn't want my gender to be a distraction. I focused on a niche, undervalued companies with innovative tech and strong female leadership. My first major breakthrough. A woman-led biotech startup developing a revolutionary diagnostic tool. When it was acquired the next year, my initial investment multiplied tenfold. By 27, I was a millionaire. And my family? They had no idea. I moved into a comfortable, but not flashy, apartment in New York, limiting contact with my family to holidays and phone calls. During those interactions, the pattern held. Audrey, bouncing between average marketing jobs, was endlessly praised for her creativity and social connections. My career? Barely acknowledged. If it was, my mom would say, "It's nice you found stable work, though it sounds awfully boring." At family gatherings, relatives peppered Audrey with questions. Me? Generic inquiries about dating. If I mentioned my company was doing well, the conversation immediately pivoted back to Audrey, who, at 30, was planning a Bali trip, partially funded by our parents. I stopped trying to share. It was easier to create a fictional life for them, regular finance job, regular hours, regular salary. Anything to avoid their eyes glazing over, or worse, their sudden, superficial interest only because of money. Over the next 5 years, TWW Strategic Partners exploded. From a one-woman show to a boutique firm with 15 employees and over $200 million under management. My strategy was a blend of cold analysis and bold risks. I even developed an algorithm that spotted undervalued companies before anyone else. One huge success came from investing in renewable energy storage companies right before the sector blew up. Another. Identifying a pattern in consumer tech that led me to 3 obscure companies that were later acquired by giants. By 30, my net worth hit $5 million. By 32, $15 million. I was firmly in the top 1% of Americans my age. I owned a stunning Manhattan apartment overlooking Central Park. I vacationed at exclusive resorts. I could afford anything I wanted. But Grandma Liz's words about quiet wealth echoed in my mind. I didn't spend lavishly. To my family, I was still just Tanya who worked in finance. I had to keep up this elaborate fiction. A separate phone for family calls. 0 social media posts about my business. When I visited my parents, I drove a rented Toyota, not my Tesla. I wore simple clothes, hair in a ponytail, minimal makeup. Anything to project an image of someone focused on work, not success. I had my reasons for this charade. First, the fear. If they knew about the money, I knew they'd immediately ask for it, not for themselves, but for Audrey. They'd always supported her financially, bailing her out of credit card debt, apartment deposits, you name it. Second, and this hit harder, I didn't want to be suddenly valued only for my money. After a lifetime of being overlooked, what would it say about our relationship if financial success was the only thing that finally earned me their attention? The thought made me sick. And finally, the years of emotional neglect had made me fiercely protective of my achievements. This success was mine. I built it with 0 support, 0 encouragement, 0 pride from them. A deep, wounded part of me simply refused to share it with the very people who'd never believed in me. In New York, I lived a completely different life. I sat on startup boards, featured in business publications, attended exclusive industry events. I had designer clothes, fine jewelry, none of which ever saw the light of day around my family. I dated ambitious, successful men who understood my drive. My 2 lives never, ever intersected. I was a master at switching roles. Last Christmas was a perfect example. I flew home for 3 days, modest gifts, simple jeans and sweaters. At dinner, my parents gushed about Audrey's promotion to senior marketing manager. A role that probably paid less than my annual business travel budget. "Isn't it wonderful?" my mom cooed, squeezing Audrey's hand. They gave her a $5,000 bonus. I just nodded and smiled, silently remembering I'd donated 50 times that amount to a girls' coding initiative the week before. When my dad asked about my work, I gave a vague, "projects are going well," which prompted his classic, "Well, as long as you're stable, that's what matters." Not everyone needs to climb the corporate ladder. I'd become so used to it, I told myself it didn't bother me anymore. But that changed when I met Michael. He's a successful architect with his own firm, and he saw through my walls from our first date. 3 months in, he asked the question no one else ever had: why do you downplay your success around your family? It caught me off guard. We were at my apartment, and I just hung up with my mom, deflecting questions about my job with intentionally boring answers. I don't downplay it, I said automatically. They're just not interested in finance. Michael just gave me this knowing look. Tanya, you're one of the most successful people I know. You manage hundreds of millions in assets. You've been profiled in Forbes. Yet you just told your mother you had a normal day at the office checking spreadsheets. When I didn't respond, he continued, softer now, I'm not judging you. I'm just curious why you hide such a huge part of yourself from them. That night, I told Michael everything. My entire childhood, the years of emotional neglect. He listened, silent, understanding. When I finished, he said something that resonated so deeply. Living 2 separate lives must be exhausting. At some point, don't you just want to be your whole self? His question stayed with me for weeks. As Thanksgiving approached, I made a decision. I wouldn't make a dramatic announcement, but I would stop actively hiding. I'd bring Michael home. I'd wear clothes I actually liked. I'd answer questions honestly, if they were asked. As a first, small step, I bought my parents a new television. Not extravagant, but a significant upgrade from their decade-old set. It was a tiny fraction of what I could afford, but it felt huge. I was nervous, but also, strangely, excited about this small act of honesty. The drive to Boston on Wednesday before Thanksgiving was steeped in that familiar anxiety, even with Michael's reassuring presence beside me. As we pulled onto my parents' street, I saw it instantly, Audrey's brand new Audi, sparkling in the driveway. I knew my parents had helped finance that car, despite her supposed career success. Showtime, I muttered to Michael, parking on the street. The wrapped television for my parents sat innocently in the back seat. The moment we walked through the door, the family dynamic snapped right back into place, painfully predictable. My mom bypassed me completely, rushing to hug Michael, thrilled to meet my successful boyfriend. My dad gave me a distracted pat, then called out, Audrey, Tanya's here. Audrey swept into the room like she was making a grand entrance on stage. At 34, she still carried herself with the air of someone who'd been told her whole life she was special. Flawless makeup, freshly highlighted hair. Tanya, she chirped, a quick, barely there hug. Then she turned immediately to Michael, eyes assessing, so, you're the famous Michael. Mom says you're an architect. As Michael handled the introductions with effortless grace, I scanned the living room. The mantelpiece was dominated by new photos of Audrey and her husband, Brad, including several from their Hawaii vacation, an anniversary gift from my parents. Tucked away on a side table, I found one blurry photo of me, my 5-year-old graduation picture. Dinner that evening was a masterclass in favoritism. My mom had made all of Audrey's favorite foods, including those labor-intensive Swedish meatballs she loved. When I offered to help in the kitchen, my mom waved me off. No need, honey. Audrey already set the table so beautifully. The conversation revolved entirely around Audrey's recent promotion. She waved her hands dramatically, describing her new office with a window view, her team of 2 junior marketers. It's just such a validation, you know, she sighed, sipping wine. All those years of networking are finally paying off. They specifically told me my people skills were why I got the position. My parents nodded enthusiastically. When Brad meekly mentioned the promotion came with only a modest raise, my dad immediately piped up, well, you know, we can help out if you need to upgrade some things. First impressions matter in business. Not a single person asked about my work. Until dessert. My mom finally turned to me. And how's your job going? Tanya's still doing the spreadsheet thing. Before I could even answer, Audrey jumped in. She wouldn't know what to do with a promotion anyway. She laughed. Remember how she always hated being the center of attention? She's happier behind a desk. It was a slap in the face. Later, a final indignity. Michael and I were assigned the small guest room with a lumpy pull-out sofa. Audrey and Brad. They got the master suite, queen bed, attached bath. When I mentioned it to my mom, she genuinely looked confused by my objection. Audrey and Brad are used to a certain standard, dear. And you know your sister has back problems. Besides, you've always been less fussy about accommodations. That night, as Michael and I tried to get comfortable on that ancient sofa bed, he whispered, "Are they always like this?" I just sighed. "Actually, they're on better behavior because you're here." And I wasn't even joking. Thanksgiving morning. I was coming down the hall when I heard my name from the kitchen. I froze, just out of sight. "I just don't understand why Tanya hasn't progressed more in her career," my mom was saying. "She was always so good at math." My dad replied, "Some people just don't have ambition. She's always been content with less, not like Audrey, always striving for more." Then Audrey sighed dramatically. "I feel bad for her sometimes. And now she's brought this really successful guy home." I googled him. His firm does huge projects. I give it 6 months before he realizes she's not at his level. Their words. They sliced deeper than they should have, after a lifetime of similar sentiments. Michael found me there, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Let's go for a walk," he whispered. Outside, in the crisp November air, the dam broke. The tears just poured out. "It's been like this my whole life," I choked out. "Nothing I do is ever enough. And now they're pitying me because they think you're too successful for me." Michael stopped, turning to face me. "You know what I think," he said. "I think it's time they knew exactly who you're hiding." Later that afternoon, helping my mom, I had to take an unavoidable business call. A major investment was finalizing, my input critical. I stepped into the backyard for privacy, speaking confidently about million-dollar figures, strategy adjustments. I didn't realize Audrey had followed me until I hung up and turned. She was standing there, by the back door, her expression narrowed with suspicion. "Who was that?" she demanded. Sounded pretty intense for someone who just does data entry or whatever. "Just work stuff," I tried to brush past her. She blocked my path. "Since when do data analysts talk about investment portfolios and 7-figure returns? What's your job, actually?" Before I could even formulate a response, my mom called us in to set the table. Audrey gave me a long, calculating look, but turned away. My carefully constructed narrative was unraveling. I was terrified. But strangely, relieved. The final thread snapped when Michael, making casual conversation with Brad, mentioned our upcoming trip to Tokyo. "Tanya has a new client there," he explained. "But we're extending the trip to explore. I've never been, but Tanya goes a few times a year for work." I saw Audrey's head snap up. Her eyes narrowed. This contradicted everything I'd ever told them about my modest career. As we moved to the dining room for Thanksgiving dinner, the tension was palpable, building like a storm. The table itself was picture perfect, my mom's best tablecloth, the good china, a golden turkey surrounded by every classic side imaginable. My dad said grace, thanking God for family and abundance. Prophetic words, considering the bombshell about to drop. The first 15 minutes were pleasantly numb. Turkey was moist, reminiscences of Thanksgivings past. My mom directed all her questions to Audrey and Brad, kitchen renovations, family plans. Audrey just turned 34. "Plenty of time," my mom cooed, squeezing Audrey's hand. "But grandchildren would be such a blessing." No one mentioned I was 32 and might also be considering family. Michael caught my eye, a silent, encouraging smile. As plates were being refilled, my dad, genuinely curious, asked Michael about his architecture firm. While Michael described a recent museum renovation, I slipped out to the car for the wrapped TV. I returned, placing the large package against the wall, then rejoined the table. "What's that?" my mom asked, noticing it. "Just a little something for you and Dad," I said, trying to sound casual. "An early Christmas present. Thought you might enjoy it for the holiday football games." After dinner, I brought the gift to them. They looked surprised. My gifts were usually small, practical things under $50. My dad tore off the wrapping. A 55-inch smart television. Not the most expensive, but a huge upgrade. His eyebrows shot up as he read the specs. "Tanya, this is too much," my mom said, bewildered. This must have cost a fortune. It was on sale, I lied instinctively, then caught myself. Actually, it wasn't. I wanted to get you something nice. How can you afford something like this? My dad asked, a mix of concern and suspicion in his voice. These are over $1,000. I do all right at work, I replied carefully. Audrey, who'd been staring at the box with narrowed eyes, pulled out her phone. The model number was visible. My heart sank. I knew exactly what she was doing. $1,500, she announced after a quick search. Tanya, that's more than a month's rent for some people. Since when can you afford gifts like this on a mid-level analyst salary? Michael's hand found my knee under the table, a silent anchor. I took a deep breath. It was time. I've actually been doing very well at work, I began, testing the waters. My company has expanded significantly, and I'm in a leadership position now. Leadership? Audrey snorted. Last Christmas, you said you were still doing the same job. I simplified things, I admitted. The truth is, I own my own investment firm. We're quite successful. A stunned silence fell. My dad stared at me like I'd started speaking a foreign language. My mom looked at Audrey, searching for an interpretation. What are you talking about? Audrey demanded. You've never mentioned owning a company. While this uncomfortable exchange unfolded, Audrey's thumbs were flying on her phone. She was Googling me. And this year, unlike all previous ones, I hadn't asked publications to use my middle name or avoid photos. The color drained from her face as she scrolled. Then, a sudden, jarring crash. She slammed her phone onto the table, standing up. Tanya Warren, CEO of TWW Strategic Partners, she read, her voice rising with each word. A boutique investment firm managing over $200 million in assets. Featured in Forbes 30 Under 30-Foot Finance edition. Named one of New York's most influential women in business last year. She looked up, her face a mask of disbelief and pure, unadulterated rage. All these years you've been what? Secretly rich while we've been struggling with mortgage payments. While I had to beg mom and dad for help with car loans. I stayed calm, though my heart was hammering. It's not a secret, exactly. It's just not something I discussed with family. Not something you discussed. Audrey was practically screaming. You let us think you were some ordinary office worker while you're apparently worth. She glanced back at her phone, her eyes widening even further. Oh my God. $15 million. The dining room went completely silent. My dad was frozen, fork halfway to his mouth, utterly speechless. My mom made a small choking sound, reaching for her water glass with a trembling hand. $15 million, Audrey repeated, her voice now a dangerous whisper. All these years, mom and dad helping me, while you sat on a fortune. How selfish can you possibly be? That accusation. Selfish. It finally broke through my composure. Selfish? I said, my voice low but intense. I've been selfish. Yes. Selfish. Audrey was in full meltdown, pacing beside the table. Do you know what we could have done with that money? Brad and I have wanted a house for years. Mom and dad had to dip into their retirement to help us with basic expenses, and you're just hoarding millions. My parents were still in shock, unable to intervene as their golden child unleashed her tirade. How much do you have, exactly? Audrey demanded. Is it really $15 million? And you've never once offered to help your family? What kind of person does that make you? Michael started to speak, but I put a hand on his arm. This was my battle. What kind of person does that make me? I repeated, slowly rising to my feet. Let me tell you exactly what kind of person I am, Audrey. I'm the kind of person who was overlooked her entire life by her own family. I'm the daughter whose academic achievements were ignored while your dance recitals were treated like Broadway productions. I'm the sister who got used clothes while you got designer labels. Who got educational books for Christmas while you got jewelry. I turned to my parents. Their expressions had shifted from shock to a dawning, uncomfortable realization. I'm the daughter who worked 3 jobs in college while you paid Audrey's full tuition and gave her spending money, I continued. I'm the child whose graduation speech you barely watched because you were too busy filming Audrey's reactions. I am the person who built a multi-million-dollar company from scratch, with no support, no encouragement, and not a single word of pride from either of you. Brad was staring at his plate, clearly mortified. My mother had silent tears streaming down her face. My father still hadn't spoken, his mouth slightly open, as if the words were stuck in his throat. And now, I said, my voice steady despite the emotion coursing through me. Now that you've discovered I have money, suddenly I'm interesting. Suddenly I'm important enough to acknowledge. What does that say about our family? Audrey was momentarily stunned, but quickly recovered. This isn't about childhood petty jealousy, Tanya, she snapped. This is about basic family obligation. You owe us. I don't owe anyone anything, I replied. The money I have, I earned through my own hard work and strategic decisions. Just like the attention you received all our lives was something you never had to earn. It was simply given to you. That's completely different. Audrey shouted, her face flushed with anger. Mom and Dad were just being parents. Of course, they were proud of me. But money. Real money. That's something you share with family. Like you shared your parents' attention and love with me. I asked quietly. My mother finally found her voice. Tanya, we never meant to make you feel less loved, she said weakly. We just thought Audrey needed more support. You were always so capable, so independent. I was independent because I had to be. I shot back. I was capable because no one else was going to do things for me. My father finally spoke, his voice raspy. 15 million, he whispered. How is that even possible? I made smart investments, I said simply. Starting with Grandma's $50,000 that you wanted me to give to Audrey for grad school. Audrey wasn't finished. So, what happens now? She demanded. Are you going to help your family, or continue being selfish? Brad and I could use a down payment for a house. Mom and Dad should be able to retire comfortably. That's what family does for each other. Michael, who had been respectfully silent, finally spoke up. From what I've observed today, Tanya has been giving to this family her entire life, just not financially. Perhaps it's time someone gave something back to her. Like basic respect. Nobody asked you. Audrey snapped at him. I think we're done here, I said, placing my napkin on the table. Michael and I will be staying at a hotel tonight. You're just going to walk out. Audrey was incredulous. After dropping this bomb on us. Typical Tanya, always thinking about herself. As I gathered my coat, I turned for one last look. My father seemed incapable of forming sentences. My mother was crying silently. Brad looked like he wanted to disappear under the table. And Audrey stood with her fists clenched, years of entitlement crashing against the sudden, brutal realization that her overlooked sister had surpassed her in the most tangible way society measures success. Thanksgiving dinner was over. The turkey half-eaten, the pumpkin pie untouched. As Michael and I walked to the door, I heard Audrey call after me, "This conversation isn't over, Tanya. You can't just hide your money from your family and pretend that's okay." But I was already stepping into the cool November air, feeling lighter than I had in years. The Marriott hotel room. It felt like a sanctuary after that explosive dinner. Michael ordered room service, and I sat on the edge of the bed, alternating between bursts of relieved laughter and moments of sheer disbelief. "I can't believe that just happened," I said, probably for the 10th time. "Did you see my father's face? I've never, in 32 years, seen him speechless." Michael sat beside me, handing me a glass of wine. "You were magnificent," he said. "Completely dignified, while your sister had a full-blown tantrum over money that isn't hers." The aftermath began almost immediately. My phone buzzed with texts and calls, first from Audrey, then my mom, even Brad. I silenced it, placed it face down. "They'll have to wait until tomorrow," I said. "I'm emotionally exhausted." That night, curled against Michael's chest, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Sorrow for the family relationship I never truly had. Anger at years of dismissal. But overwhelmingly, a sense of release. The secret I'd carried for so long was finally out. Chaotic as the revelation had been, there was freedom in no longer hiding. Morning brought a flood of notifications. Audrey had sent 17 texts overnight, a roller coaster from furious, "How dare you walk out," to a fleeting, "I'm sorry," I yelled, "but you have to understand how shocking this was," to entitled, "We need to talk about how your money can help the family," and back to angry, "Your silence is so immature and selfish." My mom called 4 times, leaving tearful voicemails begging me to come back. Brad sent one awkward text, apologizing for the dinner and disavowing Audrey's expectations. My father. Nothing. Not a call, not a text. I was in the shower when there was a knock at the door. Michael answered. My dad stood in the hallway, still in yesterday's clothes, haggard from a sleepless night. "I need to speak with my daughter," he said. I emerged, wrapped in a hotel robe, my wet hair dripping. "Dad?" I said, surprised. "How did you find us?" "Only 3 hotels in town," he replied. This was my second stop. "The Hilton sends their regards." The attempt at humor fell flat. Michael excused himself, heading for coffee. My dad sank into a desk chair, and I perched on the bed. For almost a minute, he just stared at his hands. $15 million, he finally said, shaking his head. "I still can't wrap my head around it." "It's not about the money, Dad," I said quietly. He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed and tired. "I know," he replied, surprising me. "It's about how we treated you. How we've always treated you." The simple acknowledgement hit me hard. I'd expected defensiveness, justifications. Not this. The admission brought tears to my eyes. "I wasn't a good father to you," he continued, his voice rough. "I told myself Audrey needed more attention, more support. She was always so dramatic, so demanding. You were quiet, capable, smart. I thought that meant you needed less from us. But that wasn't fair to you." "No, it wasn't," I agreed, unwilling to soften the truth. "Your mother and I, we fell into a pattern," he said. "Audrey would cry and throw tantrums if she didn't get what she wanted. You would just adapt, find another way. We took the path of least resistance, and you suffered for it." He ran a hand over his face. "When you were 10, you won that science competition. Built that solar system model that actually moved. I was so proud. But I never told you. We had to leave early because Audrey was bored and making a scene." I remembered. Weeks of work, careful calculations, building that motor. First place. But my family was gone when they called my name. "There've been 1,000 moments like that," I said. 1,000 times my achievements were brushed aside while Audrey's mediocrity was celebrated. He winced, but didn't argue. "You're right. And now you've become more successful than we could have imagined, and we missed it. We missed your whole journey. Would it have mattered if I wasn't successful?" I asked. "If I was just an ordinary analyst, making a decent living, would we be having this conversation? Or would Audrey still be the center of the family universe?" He had no answer. Our conversation was interrupted by my phone ringing. My mom again. I declined. Moments later, my dad's phone rang. He answered, speaking in low tones, his expression tightening. "They're at the house," he said, hanging up. "Your mother and Audrey. They want to talk to you. All of us. As a family. About my money," I guessed. He couldn't meet my eyes. Answer enough. When Michael returned, I filled him in. "Is it worth going back?" he asked, concerned. "You don't owe them another confrontation." I considered it. Part of me wanted to drive straight back to New York and leave the mess behind. But another part, the part that had spent a lifetime seeking their acknowledgement, wanted resolution. "I think I need to finish this," I said. Set boundaries, once and for all. Back at my parents' house, my mom and Audrey waited in the living room. My mom rushed forward for a hug, but I stepped back, maintaining distance. "Let's just talk," I said. Audrey had clearly been crying, her makeup smudged, eyes puffy. But the set of her jaw told me she was far from accepting anything. "I want to apologize for how I reacted yesterday," she began, her voice controlled. "It was a shock, finding out my sister is secretly wealthy while we've been struggling. I've watched you take family support your entire adult life," I replied. "College tuition, help with rent, car payments, vacations. Even now, at 34, you expect mom and dad to subsidize your lifestyle. I never asked for or received a dime. That's different, she insisted. They offered that help because they love me. And because I didn't need it, I don't deserve the same love. I asked. My mom interjected, pleading. We love you both the same, Tanya. We just showed it differently. You didn't show it to me at all, I said flatly. My entire childhood is a case study in favoritism. Name one of my achievements you celebrated as enthusiastically as Audrey's dance recitals. One time you put my needs before hers. The silence was damning. Audrey, growing impatient, cut to the chase. Look, what happened in the past is done. We're adults now. The question is, what are you going to do to help your family now that we know you can? The entitlement in her voice was staggering. Nothing, I said. Nothing, she repeated, incredulous. You have $15 million and you're doing nothing for your family. What have you ever done for me? Besides compete for attention, dismiss my accomplishments, and now demand access to my money. That's what families do, Tanya, she nearly shouted. They support each other. Yes, they do, I agreed. But this isn't support you're asking for. It's entitlement to something you didn't earn. If mom and dad needed medical care or were losing their house, that's different. But you want my money because you think you deserve a better lifestyle than you've earned yourself. The conversation devolved from there. Audrey grew increasingly hostile, cycling through guilt trips, outright demands, and finally, threats to cut me out of the family if I didn't share my wealth. My mom wept, pleading for peace, but never addressing the core issues. My dad sat silent, mostly looking defeated. After an hour of circular arguments that resolved nothing, Michael and I gathered our things. As we headed for the door, my dad followed us outside to the car. I'm sorry, he said simply. For everything. For 32 years of getting it wrong. I just nodded. What could I say to encompass the complexity of that? We drove back to New York that afternoon, 3 days earlier than planned. During the long drive, Michael and I talked through everything. You handled that with incredible grace, he said as we crossed into New York. Most people would have either caved or completely burned bridges. I don't know if the bridges aren't burned anyway, I sighed. I can't imagine Thanksgiving will be on the calendar next year. Maybe that's not a bad thing, he suggested gently. Family should lift you up, not tear you down. Sometimes the family we choose is more important than the family we're born into. The week after Thanksgiving brought continued fallout. My parents called daily, their approach slowly shifting from defending Audrey to acknowledging their role. My dad, especially, seemed genuinely reflective. I don't think I ever really saw you, he told me during one call. I was so busy managing Audrey's needs that I missed who you actually were. I'm proud of you, Tanya. Not because of the money, but because you built something remarkable despite having parents who failed you. My mom struggled more, often falling back on, but we loved you both, or Audrey just needed more attention. Still, I could sense a gradual shift. Small cracks in the narrative she'd maintained for decades. Audrey took a different approach. After days of angry, unanswered messages, she began reaching out to extended family, sharing a distorted version of events. She painted me as a greedy, selfish sister. My phone lit up with messages from cousins I barely spoke to, expressing disappointment. I've never asked you for money before, wrote one cousin, but my son really wants to go to soccer camp this summer. And since you're obviously loaded. I deleted the messages. The people who truly knew me understood. The ones who only showed up when money was involved. They just confirmed why I'd kept my success private for so long. 6 months after the Thanksgiving meltdown, spring brought new growth. The immediate aftermath had been painful, yes. But that enforced honesty had created space for healing. Even if it wasn't the healing I might have once hoped for. I started seeing Dr. Elizabeth Harrison, a therapist specializing in family trauma. Your success, she explained, triggered a family system built on specific roles. You were the self-sufficient, overlooked child. Audrey was the needy, celebrated child. Your parents focused their resources where they perceived the greatest need. When you revealed your success, you shattered those roles, and the entire system destabilized. Through therapy, I realized I couldn't change my past or my family's behavior. But I could set clear boundaries. I drafted an email to my entire family. I would not discuss my finances. I would not fund Audrey's lifestyle. And I would only participate in family gatherings where my achievements and personhood were respected, equally to my sisters. Audrey essentially cut contact. Her final message was scathing, accusing me of destroying the family. I blocked her number that day. Immediate relief. My relationship with my parents evolved. It became more limited, but also more honest. We spoke every few weeks, carefully avoiding old trigger topics. My dad made genuine efforts to show interest in my life and work, asking thoughtful questions. "I truly didn't understand what you were building," he told me once. "I just assumed finance meant some entry-level position. I'm sorry I never asked for details." My mom still struggled, still brought up Audrey, but I could see her trying. After careful consideration, I did make one financial decision regarding my family. I established an educational trust fund for Audrey's children, my niece and nephew. It would cover their college expenses, structured so Audrey couldn't access it. When I told my parents, my dad expressed genuine gratitude. "That's incredibly generous, Tanya," he said. "Given everything." "I love those kids," I replied. "Their future shouldn't be limited by adult conflicts." My relationship with Michael deepened. He'd seen me at my most vulnerable, and my most powerful. 6 months after that Thanksgiving, he proposed during a weekend trip to the Berkshires, presenting a vintage emerald ring that was absolutely perfect. "Do you think we'll have kids someday?" he asked that night, my head on his chest. "I think so," I replied, surprised by how much I wanted that future with him. "But we'll do better than my parents did. We'll love each child for exactly who they are, not who needs us most." The most profound healing came from building what Michael called my chosen family. My closest friends, especially those who'd known about my success all along, gave me the unconditional support I never found at home. We celebrated holidays, created new traditions, built connections based on mutual respect, not obligation. My relationship with money also transformed. For years, my wealth was a secret source of validation, concrete proof I'd succeeded despite my family's lack of faith. After the confrontation, I saw it differently. Not a scorecard, but a tool. A means to security and options. I increased my philanthropic giving, focusing on women in finance and tech. I mentored female entrepreneurs, sharing knowledge and seed funding. The joy of helping others build their dreams far surpassed the hollow satisfaction of accumulating wealth in secret. As the next Thanksgiving approached, I'd learned profound lessons. First, honesty, however painful, is less exhausting than pretense. My double life had consumed so much emotional energy. Second, money doesn't create character flaws, it reveals them. Those who valued me continued to do so. Those who suddenly showed interest. Their transactional approach to relationships was just laid bare. Third, and most importantly, my worth was never dependent on my family's recognition. I'd spent decades seeking validation from people constitutionally unable to provide it. That recognition had to come from within. From knowing my own value, regardless of external affirmation. The journey isn't over, of course. Family systems don't transform overnight, and old wounds don't heal completely in months. But I'd found a path forward that honored both my past and my future. I'd stopped allowing myself to be defined by what my family couldn't give me, and started embracing what I could create for myself. I would always be the girl who grew up in her sister's shadow. But I had also become the woman who stepped into her own light. And that, my friends, was a story worth $15 million.